Okay, sketching is how we're going to start assignment 2. And we can go through the unit module always to get introduced. But our course outline today is just about working on assignment 2. So I'm going to go right to assignments and go right to it, right? And on this assignment page, you have the shortcut to right where we post it. But then you'll also, if you're interested, have a link to the past examples. And then also on this assignment page is where I'll put supplementary materials that can help you understand the topic. It's not required course reading, but if you're having trouble getting inspired or understanding how this relates to professional practice, and we don't always have time to go over that fully in class, since we're doing a lot of hands-on learning, I'll introduce you to it now. Don't worry about that, I'll fix that. So this is an artist named R.J. Palmer. A pretty young artist, about 20 years younger than I am, and started like a lot of digital art enthusiasts start by doing fan art and posting it online on DeviantArt, but started to have a certain obsession with matching reality, right? And making digital models that matched reality, and started with dinosaurs. So these are all composited. There are a lot of natural history photos, right, of dinosaur bones. And so he started compositing and really thinking about how the anatomy works, basically doing his own designs in 2 dimensions of what like Jurassic Park did in the 90s under a designer who went to my school named Crash McCurry. But Crash McCurry did not use digital to design the Jurassic Park dinosaurs for Steven Spielberg. He just used a mechanical pencil and illustration board. He did it all in pencil from the side. So R.J. Palmer was trying to make everything not as entertaining as the Jurassic Park designs, which are augmented from reality, but instead to make kind of the most realistic model he could. And this was before the research about T-Rexes having feathers and that kind of thing. So you do have to guess about color and texture on the outside. Now it looks 3D, and that's because it's composited from photo references and then digitally painted over to kind of smooth everything out. But it's not 3D, it's all just 2D compositing, just like what we're doing. Then he takes that composite and he layers it into a background, right? And we designed our composited landscape, right? And he just does it in a different order. So he designs his creature first and then composites a landscape to put it in. And then he got interested in other animals. Always the same thing. And then that exact same process allows you to then take it into what we're doing now, which is fantasy. And coming up with imaginary animals, which are always some sort of combination of things that really do exist. But this is a type of anatomy we do not see on our planet, right? Where you have both wings and forearms on the same creature. You can have bat wings, you can have bird wings. You can't observe in nature the 6 kind of leg structure that this requires. But looking at this really extreme anatomy of pterodactyls, of Tyrannosaurus, which have massively different sizes of forearms, right? Kind of the biggest difference in forearms in the skeletal record. He was able to kind of combine the two, the very different anatomies, and augment the skeleton so that it would work. What does that mean? It means you have this huge breastbone, just like a pterodactyl, to support all the muscles you would need to move these giant wings. Game of Thrones does this too. And you have a lesser collarbone to support the smaller forelegs. And you see all the muscles have to be layered on top of each other. So this is what you do to make believable fantasy creatures. Right? And notice, very importantly, which Game of Thrones does not do as well, but you'll see that the spinal ridges extend out like some birds and some fish onto the tail to connect with those wings. Because if you're carrying so much weight, You need those wings to have as much surface area as possible. So how does he go about doing this in his more kind of advanced process of these imaginary creatures? He'll start by making just a little wire maquette. And that's a model. Animators use these all the time. They just make them out of pipe cleaners. And it helps understand the skeletal structure. You can see where the flexible points are, like the neck, the waist, the tail. And you can see from just a simple little skeletal template, you can really understand the proportions, and then he can design all the flesh on top of that, the bones, the muscles, the skin. Now, he started doing this in more animated, 2D graphics as well. It's the same process, and that's like the how to draw book I brought in. You start with basic shapes, basic proportions. You do that spinal curve. And instead of building up with all the photorealistic detail of the skeleton, the muscles, here you're just trying to get clean edges on your forms, your muscular forms, your rib cage, your neck. And you can see how all that anatomy helps inform the design. So then this is actually what got him noticed, because all of that was just done for his DeviantArt page. And DeviantArt is looked at by a lot of industry people, but it's hard to break through. So this was in the early, this is like the 2000 teens. He started doing Pokemon, right? And then like he was taking dinosaurs and then dragons very seriously, he started to take Pokemon seriously. And then things like alien concepts, older special effects from the 80s. And then he started applying those same concepts, right? So here is his composite design for Bulbasaur, this Pokemon, right, in the different stages. And really thinking about the skeleton, the musculature, and then compositing it from found reference. And where needed, so using like a Komodo dragon for Charizard. And where needed, just digitally painting over to kind of fill the gaps. This is one of my favorites that he did. Obviously, this Pokemon's a little bit closer to real-world analogs. And then even animating it and putting in other Pokemon designs with it. So that got noticed. And that's what made him employable, basically. He also posts a lot of his tips, right? Though every digital artist workflow is unique. But I like this. his number one tip is to organize everything. So as we're starting compositing and trying to make believable concepts, right? We need to start finding reference, but then knowing where to find it. And so for this one, we are going to organize it based in terms of head, body, feet, those kind of different areas, because we might end up with a lot of different references. And what was his big break? His big break was that he was the chief designer for the realistic, quote unquote, 3D models. Even though he's not a 3D modeler, he did the 2D composite designs that 3D modelers then worked on as reference for the movie Detective Pikachu, which was the first movie to make, as realistic as possible these Pokemon versions. So, and I've actually yet to see that movie, but I've heard it's good. So, how can we learn from that, right? Well, as we make our composite creature, we can have any wild idea we like. And we can be inspired. He was inspired by dinosaurs. He was inspired by dragons. He was inspired by Pokemon, right? We can be inspired by anything, but we need to be inspired by something in order to learn how to make it functional, make it believable through anatomy, through the skeleton, through the way the muscles might work. And because we're just doing two-dimensional images like he does, we only get one point of view to really show off the anatomy of our creature. So we want to make sure it shows all the limbs, all the distances. So usually that means a 3/4 view, sometimes a more profile view. It almost never means a straight-on view, right? So we're always thinking in terms of silhouette. And that's why I recommended Pokemon as an inspiration last class. But I'm going to be inspired by my own little maquettes, which are these Oaxacan wood sculptures. And you'll notice that both this porcupine and this dodo, these are wood carvings. What's nice is you can find these wood carvings photographed from multiple angles online. And so these are matching the same angle. So it's not hard to think how I might sketch this. And then even before I sketch it, before, during, after, I want to start finding references that I can use to inform it. Because I can't just composite wood sculptures together because they won't feel like they move or have believable textures or work in my environment. If I wanted to reference a lot of puppetry with wood, then maybe I could put in the joints and all of that and make it believable. But that's not what I was thinking of doing. So instead, this is my inspiration, but let's talk about organizing, right? This is my reference. And so my reference images are from things for the beak, things for the chest, things for the feet, things for the back. And so I'm going to make, in my references, subfolders. I'm going to make a head folder. I'm going to make a body folder. I'm going to make a feet folder. And then I'm going to make a tail folder. And that should be enough for this kind of quick composite. So now I have all of those folders. Now I need to sort my images. And it can be a little hard to see your images when they're this small, and it can be really time intensive to open them all up and then move them. So what I like to do on a Mac, and you can do similar things on a PC, is to hit Command plus to zoom in on them, and then go to where you organize them and say organize them by name, and that will fit them all on the screen, right? And I can always do Command minus to kind of shrink them. Now, if you really want to control that on a Mac, this is getting a little wonky into Mac stuff, but you can click here within your folder and go to Show View Options. And then on Show View Options, you can control the icon size. You can control how they're grouped. So I'll put the folders separate than the rest of the images. And you can control the spacing between them. And this makes it really nice. What you do not want to do is ever click Use as Defaults, because then whatever you choose for this will be everywhere on your computer, and that's a real pain. So, which ones are good for my head? Well, I always like to composite the head out of at least 2 parts. Otherwise, you just have the head of a recognizable creature on the body of something fantastic, right? Like having a giraffe's head on top of an ostrich. It's like, yeah, it's fun, but it's not really believable or it doesn't transport you, make you think you're seeing something new. So some of the head stuff I like is going to be obvious, like images of a dodo bird. This comes from a sculpture, a photorealistic sculpture of a dodo bird from a natural history museum. And then some unusual stuff, like I really liked the crest on this parrot. And remember, these are coming, I'm using exclusively things from Pixabay, just because I really like the quality of it. So we're going well over 1,000 pixels. It looks a little silly, but there's parts of that I might be able to use. And remember, you don't need to use every reference you collect. Every reference you collect gives you ideas. I also like this pelican bill, which is kind of the most similar thing in today's animals to the dodo's bill. And what else for the head? I liked the really, really funky textures of this chick, right? And I thought that might, because I don't want it to look too clean and cute, so I thought that might be nice for the head. So those are my head references. Now, what does the head connect to? The head connects to a body, and I want to really use the porcupine for that. So I got these different porcupine references. There are different species of porcupine, and there are different ages of porcupine. So all of these give me different textures, but they're all at a similar